Please stop reading your email. Last year I got 7,482 emails from my company. 200 of them were from customers that I'm supposed to be helping. 200 out of the 7,400. Of the 200 that emailed me, over 60 of them were about a consistent problem we have with our auto billing. So of the rest of those emails, I can't tell you that they were worth my time. And so what I started to do is not to read them. What it does is it frees up an amazing amount of time. It's surprising what it does. The effect of that lasts very long and it goes very far. What I found by not reading my email is that it frees up a lot of time that should be dedicated towards something else. There's something far more valuable to do with your time than reading your email. But there is a little bit of a hint I can give you about which ones you should read. You don't have to get rid of all of your email, just nearly all of it. So here's how a little matrix I have. If I get an email and only 2 other people have responded, I'm not reading it because that thread's going nowhere. If I get an email and it has to be over 13, if there's over 13 people that have responded to it, well, that one's going somewhere and someone needs to kill it. So then I look at that email, I decide what the issue is, and I see if I can sum it up and stop the madness. Then I respond to that one. If it isn't one of those 2, I don't deal with it. I never, ever, ever read an email that says, for your information, FYI. FYI emails are only sent by people who want other people to know that they know something. I'm willing to grant that they know something. I'm not going to get involved in it. An FYI email isn't something that I'm going to participate in. I like the idea that by freeing up all this time, I can do something else with it, and that's really what I want to talk about. But I realize that we can hardly make time unless we know where to take the time from. And one of these things is this insidious email game that we play. What I found is that when I started telling people that I would no longer read my email, they were shocked by that. And then they were impressed. It happened first, my boss came to me and said, well, we don't see you participating in some of these conversations, and I don't really know what it is you're doing about that. I said, well, I have this one procedure that I follow all the time. If I see this email come in, and that's a person that I'm going to see, I don't bother reading it. You know why? Because we're going to talk about it. If I do respond to it, when I see them at 2 o'clock that afternoon, you know what they say? Oh, yeah, on the email that we just had, and we review it. And if I don't respond to it, they'll say, did you get that email? And then we're going to talk about it. Either way, we're going to talk about it at 2 o'clock. So I'm not going to respond to it at 9 o'clock in the morning. We're going to get there. When I told my boss that I don't send any emails that I don't have to, and that if I can talk to anybody about the issue rather than send an email, he looked at me when he was mad at me at first for not participating enough in the flow of ideas and dialogue. He then said, I wish I could do that. I said, yeah, if you did that, you'd find that your time frees up amazingly. There's another thing that's been alluded to that we need to stop doing if we're going to make time for making things, which is what I really want to talk about again. To get there, you got to take the time from somewhere. One of them is email, not that big of a deal, let it go. The other one is attending needless social functions out of obligation. This is a time suck of epic proportions. I can tell you, if you ever have to attend a professional function and the sole goal of you being at this function is so that you can be seen, you ever do that? Yeah, it's just a face thing. I have to be seen. I promise you, by not being seen, you'll get a lot more done. Really, there's nothing that's going to happen when time you go there and you're seen, and they, oh, yep, there you are. Then you're in the crowd with everybody else who's there. What really is a much more interesting conversation is, why wasn't so-and-so there? And when they find out, oh, yeah, he didn't come in because he's steam bending a boat today in a side yard. People go, well, what's that about? I didn't know you could make a boat. What is steam bending? All of a sudden, there, you've made the impression. And you didn't even have to go. The whole point is to try to get out of these things that take time away from you that doesn't contribute anything back. One of the reasons I like to kind of free up my schedule is because I have a lot of other interests, and these interests are important, which again is what I want to talk about. But in order to get out of those social obligations, I've talked about the business obligations that you have to go to or you just have to be seen. The social obligations are a little more sticky because a lot of times these involve people that you like or that you don't like, or a spouse or a partner. I can tell you for sure that if you have a spouse or a partner and you say, on Saturday, I've committed us to attend this. The partner who committed you is hoping that you're interested in it. They already know that you're not, and they're going to start lining up some sort of power play to get you there. If you just cut the whole thing off and say, I'm not going, those are your friends, not mine, That's not my family, that's your family. You should love them. You should play cards with them, and you should talk with them, and that should be magic for you. It's not my family. I'm not going. Sometimes I attend these family functions, and my wife has a wonderful family. They love each other, and they're from Minnesota. And it seems, you know what they do most of the time? They get together, and they review the timeline. You ever see this? Oh, now let's see. Now, Bobby was born in '68, and that was the year that Jimmy had that big station wagon that he drove out to the lake. And then somebody else continued to the next thing. Oh, yes, I remember because we had a puppy that year, and it goes on. And every year, it's like, this is history, people. We already lived it. I'm not going to waste my time with that. I promise you, if you tell your boss you're not going to answer email anymore, and you tell your spouse or partner that you're not going to family reunions anymore, you'll have a lot of time on your hands. Which is what most of us really would like to have. Here's what I would do with that time. And here's what I began to do with that time over the last year and a half. That time is supposed to be set aside to do something that's far more meaningful than waste it at a social obligation or look at email. I believe that time is supposed to be invested where we make things. This is something that's so deep in all of us. This is something that brought us to the point where we are in our lives. It's how we developed. It's how we've gained our eye-hand coordination, all these kind of things. It happened. That's there. That skill's been acquired so that we can make things with our lives. We were never supposed to lose that. You know, the fact that we've lost it is sort of a recent phenomenon. 80 years ago, 100 years ago, if you had an idea about something, you had to make it. If you wanted to go somewhere, you had to involve yourself in the transportation issues. You know, we live in a world now that you can sub out just about everything to everybody else. I hear this all the time. People say, well, my best skill is I use my credit card and my cell phone. And we know that you can use your credit card and your cell phone, but that's not really that great of a skill. You know, of what it takes to operate a credit card and a cell phone, you can do it almost with a hoof. You really don't even need a hand. You know, isn't it amazing that evolution or creation, however you look at it, whatever has brought humankind to this point, it went through a lot of trouble. It killed off a lot of our previous ancestors until we finally got to the ability where this thumb can go all the way across this hand. We're the only ones that can do that. The only thing on earth that can do that. All right? Being able to touch all these fingers and have the eye-hand coordination that says, look, I want to pick that up and I want to manipulate it. We have that skill, and it's taken thousands of years and great forces of the universe to give us that skill. I'm worried that what we're going to do with it is double click. That wasn't what that was for. This is so that you can make something out of Play-Doh. This is so that you can fashion something together, that you can repair a watch. This is so that you can sew. This is so that you can chop vegetables and make soup. This is so that you can drink wine and you can even learn how to cork a wine barrel. This is so that you can work on a car and then drive it somewhere. All these skills are here for us to use in the physical world. They're not so that we're just going to spend the rest of our life doing this. You can do it with your elbow. You don't even need hands. I'm worried that our contribution to the furtherance of mankind is going to be that you don't need any more physical skills. And the truth is that we have all these physical skills. We desperately need them. And I think our souls are crying out for us to get back to the point where we use them. There's this other phenomenon that's happened in the last 50 years. People talk about things that are holistic. You like that? The holistic idea. We're going to try to unite ideas. You didn't used to have to do that. There used to be no way that you could separate the mind and body from functions. You couldn't just think about something and not do anything about it. If you did, you probably died. 100 years ago, if you thought about something, you had to act on it for it to actually happen, which means you got physically involved in it. The Wright brothers thought it would be neat to fly. They didn't send it out to a service bureau and hire a consultant and have all these things take place. They got in their garage and they took bicycle parts and they started carving up wood for props and they made their own wind tunnel with a fan. These were all physical things that they involved themselves with. You know, it's really what we were supposed to do. All that work and all that time we've had on earth is so that we can continue those things, not lose them. Being able to make things has such a profound impact on the kind of people that we become. Not only does it take advantage of what our physical skills are, not only does it unite our mind with our body, because it's supposed to be united, it was never supposed to be separated, but the biggest thing it does is it brings us in touch with what we're really supposed to be about. I can't explain how this happens, but if you're at one of those family reunions and you're listening for the cue of when you should go, here's the cue. So did you come down 280 or did you take 101? If anybody says that, there's nothing else interesting that's going to happen at this gathering. You should look everybody in the eye and say, I'm going home and I'm going to make a hammock. What's interesting is you'll go home and make a hammock. You know what everybody else will talk about for years? Remember that time that guy came and left and made a hammock? And somebody on the way home is going to have a fight with their spouse because one of them wants to go home and make a hammock rather than be there. There is something about involving yourself in making things that it teaches you what's important. I can't explain how that works, but it works every single time. If any one of you leave here with an idea and you are inspired to become a wine collector or a car collector or to write a program or do something, if you spend some time creatively engaging in that and physically being a part of it, it won't be long before you'll know what's worth your time. And then you'll get that call and you'll be right in the middle of it and you'll say, I'm not taking that call because right now I'm fixing a power steering leak underneath this car that I'm putting together. And you'll know that you don't need to take that call now. You ever been around people that have to take every call they get? Isn't that amazing? Doesn't matter where they are. How many times have you seen people answer the phone in the bathroom? It's fantastic fun to watch that. You know, it's like, this can wait. You do not know what's important. Your body knows what's important. It wants to relieve some stress here. Let it take care of its business. This is not time to be on the phone. I learned all this from my father. My dad was a gold and silver miner. We grew up in the mountains of Colorado. And we were in charge of making all of our own toys, fixing all of our own equipment because it was too far to go to town to do all that stuff. One of the things we did every evening in the fall is that we got together in our shed and we built a fire and my dad would put on records. Okay? These are vinyl things that go around that used to have music recorded on them. And when you play, he had the records of Earl, let's see, is it Earl Scruggs, Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs? Do I have that right? All right, these banjo and mandolin player, and I remember it because it had ping pong percussion. So that means there was a banjo player, a mandolin player, and a guy playing ping pong, and they made an album. All right, it was great, fantastic, and we would listen to this. And while we were listening to this, we would carve out rifles. My dad and I are both left-handed, and we were sporting shooters, and we could never afford to buy left-handed rifles. So every fall, we'd decide what we're going to do, what we're going to shoot, and what we're going to be a part of, and we'd sit out there in the evenings, and we'd carve out wooden gun stocks, all right? And I would watch my dad, and it was amazing to watch my dad do this, because he'd have that, you ever see people when they get involved in something, that kind of how they lose themselves, and pretty soon, you see their tongue sticking out, and they're no longer conscious of anything other than trying to focus on that one thing. And when you see that, it's so beautiful. I see that in my children when they get engaged in something and they start to make something. I see a look in them I don't see anywhere else because they're being so true and so honest to who they are. Well, that's what used to happen in our shed while we listened to ping pong percussion and mandolin music. We would make gun stocks, and I saw how much it meant to my dad, and I saw how much it meant to me. And those were the times in our lives when we didn't have a lot of trouble deciding what we were going to do with our time. It was amazing how that worked out. I'm telling you that story today because 5 years ago, my dad passed away. It was certainly sad to have my dad pass away. But the real sadness I have over the loss of my dad's life wasn't the day that he actually died, or because he did die, we all knew that was going to happen. The real tragedy that I look at for my dad is that 15 years before he died, he stopped making things. He sold his tools. He decided it wasn't worth to this time anymore. He became discouraged. He didn't really know what he should be doing, and it didn't seem like he should be taking time away from something else that was so important and investing it in sitting around the garage, listening to mandolin music and carving wood. And I watched my dad grow more and more discouraged and more pessimistic. And when he died, it was certainly sad to lose him. But I can tell you that the part of him that I missed didn't go away when he died. It went away 15 years ago when his passion was replaced with pessimism. If there's anything that happens when you engage in the physical world and you take advantage of your traditions and you begin to make things, if there's anything that happens from that, the product to look for the most is optimism. Because when you engage in changing something about a piece of jewelry that you're working on, repairing something that's been broken, designing something that the world's never seen before, and then working on it, when you do that, what you're understanding is that your efforts matter. And when you look behind you, you see what you're doing. You're taking advantage of all that work that creation has done, and all that work that evolution has done to put you on this earth with this hand that does this, and these eyes that can follow that. and a spirit that says, I don't find meaning in going to stupid meetings or answering a bunch of email or double-clicking on stuff with my whole life. It turns out that physically and spiritually, we are demanding an experience that is powerful and transforming, and that experience is available to all of us when we choose to take time to make things. I'd love to continue the conversation further. If you want to email me, I probably won't read it. Thanks so much.